We are all extensions of someone or another's golden light. In the moment I was made, stars fill the sky, and some parts of the bodies making me were fleetingly illuminated, briefly luminous. Druids see light in wood and worship trees. When we wave in recognition, we disperse light, set light in motion toward the beloved. We string our lights with trees in wintertime. We want to see ourselves in the dark. One of the kinds of poems that I love to write is the ekphrastic poem, the poem on a painting, or sometimes a poem on a piece of music, but more often than not, a poem on a painting. The more abstract or the more expressionistic the poem is, the easier it is to work with. If you give me a sort of figurative painting or a narrative painting, you know, I'm at 6s and 7s about what to make of that. But if you give me something that's sort of abstract, you know, I can go with it. This is an abstract expressionist painting by a wonderful Louisiana painter, Bill Jingles, from Shreveport. His painting is called The Gypsy's Dream, and my poem is called The Gypsy Dream. I have put all the parts of this gypsy dream of mine out on the table. I am weighing what it might say of me and you. We think sometimes dreams are ragged, fine-threaded things that seem to ravel and disperse too easily to mean anything. But try as you might to order everything and put everything in the right fields and boxes, you will fail to put the red songs in your head outside your range of singing, to erase those floating spots dancing somewhere near the pale skin of your closed eyes. In every dream are interlocking rings that chain us to who we are, rivers with boats, wind-filled sails moving us toward ourselves. Our dreams are but one kind of play. We are too tired to play in our waking lives. One tree we are too weak to climb on the other side is ours to climb in this other life. The sea you will not swim in, it is your sea. God bless the dream therapy. I think everybody ought to be in dream therapy. You know, if it only ends up doing that, telling you that you're not a monster because you dream, even though there's the monstrous in your dream. This particular poem is done after a Chinese painting, after Guanxun's Wang Shi, let me see if I can get this right, Wang Zishi watching geese. Wang Zishi was supposedly the creator of calligraphy. And the idea that attracted me to his creation of calligraphy is that he took everything from observation of the natural world. And so when he watched the geese swimming in his pond, he got a line, and it meant this, and he made language from which we make poems, from which we distinguish ourselves in interesting ways from people who don't have the kind of language that we have. And this poem is called The Calligrapher's Son. It's a little boy watching his father make language out of these observations of the natural world. His father could stand for hours watching geese, it seemed to this boy. It was as though time itself had altered whatever leases it had on standards set for time. Below them and nearer the bamboo grove, the yellow water in the pond blazed in sunlight. Set off goose lines, a seeming lighted sloop on which his father made pictograms. Brightness hammered into lines the old man put in neat rows, each mark falling in its proper place, splicing itself into another line until it ceased being simply line. Here, a line bowing like an old tree. 2 lines more, cloud eased onto lightness of rock. There, a hut to grow in. My father was a wonderful baseball player and played on teams. One of the most vivid memories I have of my father is sitting in the back of a 1950 Ford with my 2 sisters on an August night filled with mosquitoes, watching my father play on the Jack's Beer softball team. And indelible in my mind, and I don't know whether he made it as poetic as it seemed to me in imagery, but he slid into third base. And that slide into third base is something that's indelible in my memory. My father, I think, would have loved for me to be a ball player. Very, very early on, it was really clear that wasn't the way it was going. And so this is my father sort of trying to teach me. And it's also a poem about becoming a poet, and you catch the line where the poet is stronger than the ball player. My father at bat. My father is batting balls to me in the pasture. My hands are small and my glove keeps opening like a flat pan. My fingers barely reaching into the glove's fingers. The morning rain has gathered into little puddles he tells me I must not even be aware of if I'm ever to get good at this thing he is teaching me. He says the glove must become a second skin. He pops a fly, and for an instant it is the blue cloudlessness that catches my eye. I am thinking I must be a holy mess to him. He just keeps batting ball after ball after ball. At school, all this ends with a bell eventually ringing. Here, there are no bells to save me. It's just me and him. He is strong. He is doing what he has to do. And the sun is still high in the sky. I am so grateful for that lesson, and so sorry for him. And this poem is called Receipts and Other Documentation. It comes at the end of In Ordinary Light, and I wanted to end it on a kind of light note. Receipts and Other Documentation. And as I was writing it, and as I read it over and over again, I often think of Karen and what it might be like to live with a poet. Receipts and other documentation. It turns out I was there after all. When my wife asks on what day I mailed the bills, or picked up the laundry, or at what time the UPS man delivered the package, I haven't a clue. It is clear to me, though, that these things have been done, and that there is evidence to be uncovered if there ever was such a need to show exactly when the brown truck with yellow lettering rolled into our part of the world. There is evidence for sure to know exactly when the Blaze roses were delivered, and on exactly what day last fall we drove to St. Francisville to visit friends and eat at the Magnolia Cafe. Who or what hammered this retrieval system out of my brain is as much a mystery to me as the unretrievable details themselves. I take comfort in the fact that much of this part of the story is recorded by someone, somewhere, and that I was there after all. The last poem that I want to read is the last commissioned poem that I got to write. And we opened just a few months ago the Ernest J. Gaines Center in Dupree Library on the campus of University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And about a year before this happened, I was commissioned to write the poem for the dedication event. Karen was commissioned to do the glass work at the entrance. And she finished her glass work, and I still hadn't written the poem. And so It was one of the scariest things that I've ever undertaken. And so the poem is called Of Men and Rivers, and it comes from one of the chapters in Gaines, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. The poem is a double sonnet in a sonnet variant that I work with almost exclusively now. And it takes details from Ernest's life as well as details from his fictional works. And I use an epigraph at the beginning of the poem from Jane Pittman. And they may be my two favorite sentences from that novel. She's explaining to the guy who's recording her autobiography about the times that were even before she was, and particularly about the time before the Corps of Engineers came to Louisiana. And it's one of the most wonderful chapters in all of Gaines' work. And she's talking about the power of water and the power of nature. And she has a reference to the people who are older than she. And she's referring to the Native Americans who lived in that area near False River. And she says they used to catch fish out the river and eat the fish and put the bones back. They used to say, go back and be fish again. Which I think is so incredibly beautiful. Go back and be fish again. So, the poem for Ernest Gaines, Of Men and Rivers. What he thinks of when he goes to the river is not always what to take from it. Sometimes it's what to put back that brings him there. One day it will be the memory of all the lines making catenaries on the surface of the water. Sometimes it will be the fish those lines brought in. Sometimes it will be the memory of all the quarter residents and how they still live in him. Old winds the people gone before him ride on. Aunts and daughters, uncles and cousins shedding their troubles and their sins. A brother dancing in the air above him, just a sliver of memory, but enough to keep him in the rhymes of who he is and who they are, and how to put them where they belong as he lowers the bones of the fishes, spine and slime and all, into the waters they came from. He knows the giver must pay for what is given. He knows that all those times he made those stories, he lived them. How Jefferson quivered before he could stand. How Tante Lou and Miss Emma saw crimes and turned them back as much as they could with what they bartered. He knows how Jimmy came to life and how he died. He begins to see again at the water's edge. He knows again Big Laura's slaughter and how to put it back. Here he can hear Reese Spooner talk again on the back steps, and he can hear his Aunt Augustine ordering the world she lived in with an open heart. The world does not spin wildly when he comes back here. What Vivian needs, he can give her here. What drives Marcus, he can say. The raw world and the grime that comes from living in it is bearable at the water's edge, it seems here to him. The day, the year, and everything in them witness to the prime. Thank you very much.